particularly busy with we've been kept particularly busy with the launch of the primary transit network, so that's been our major focus for the last few months. But we do offer other services as well. We do what we call a Transit 101 or an overview training, which is more focused for maybe newcomers or people who have never taken the bus or maybe not in a very long time. So it goes over more fundamentals about how to, where to get bus tickets and bus passes, how to pay your fare, how transfers work, things like that. We also do a lot of one-on-one trainings with a focus on mobility device securement. So a common scenario we come in is with someone recently purchased a power wheelchair and they're very nervous about taking it on the bus and having to maneuver it in front of like a bus full of people. So we give them that opportunity to practice with a parked bus so they can get used to it and show them what the securement options are on the various transit buses. So that's just a little bit of a background for you to have about what travel training is, so that if maybe you know someone who might benefit from it or an organization, you can absolutely send them our way and we'd be happy to try to help them out and make them ride transit more with a bit more confidence. I'm not an overly formal presenter, so although we do have a Q&A section at the end, if you do have a question particularly about something that's pertaining to the slides that we're on, feel free to, I do apologize, Norman, I'm going to tell this joke again, pull the yellow cord on the side of the bus to request a stop. I would just ask that any more general discussion we'll keep to the end so we can kind of bounce out of the presentation and maybe go to other resources. But with that out of the way, I will start the presentation and we'll get started. But thank you all for joining. All right, so, and can everyone hear me and see the presentation all right? All right, so we'll get started. The focus today will be on the primary transit network. I know Mel already did our land and water acknowledgement, but it is a part, very important for any presentations we do as a city department that we do as well. So we do acknowledge that Winnipeg is located in Treaty 1 territory, home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, and Dakota people, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 Nation in Treaty 3 territory. So what's the purpose of this session today? We're going to answer and discuss a few of the following points. How the new transit network works, how we came to this point, that kind of all important is like, why did we change things in the first place? What comes next? Because, we're, 3 months post-launch here, we've had the network out in the wild. A lot of people are thinking like, what's happening next? What are some of the tools and resources that are available to you and to share? And really importantly, because again, this is in the first few months of the first year of a brand new network, ways to submit feedback. I haven't met anyone in my career as a travel trainer who doesn't have a strong feeling one way or the other about the primary transit network. And it's really important that people know how to submit that feedback. So if anyone isn't already aware, the primary transit network launched on June 29th of this year. So it was approved by City Council to launch this year. It was actually approved to launch a year earlier than initially planned. They were really eager to get some changes to Manitobans and Winnipeggers specifically. It's a change of the entire transit system. We didn't pick one neighborhood or one part of the city or a few lines to change. We changed everything. It's the key change under the Winnipeg Transit Master Plan, which sounds like something that a supervillain would come up with, but it really is just referring to a multi-year plan, culminating in some potential future projects, such as like expansion of Union Station as a transit hub, maybe even building on more rapid transit corridors. The shift is from a radial system, which is what we had before. The travel trainers, we like to refer to it more as the wagon wheel, with downtown being the hub and all the routes radiating from that. It moves into what we call spine and feeder system, which is not a term I was familiar with until I started this job, so you may not be either, which brings us to a short little video. I'm going to give myself and you guys a break from hearing my voice for just a minute here. We'll play a little video that walks through the fundamentals of what the spine and feeder network is.
Transit in Winnipeg. We know it could be better. You told us you want transit to be frequent, efficient, reliable, and accessible. That's why we're introducing the primary transit network and its feeder routes. Together, they form a spine and feeder bus network, like the one we launched for the Blue Rapid Transit line in 2020. Bus lines that travel along the spines are frequent and direct. The straight, simple lines they follow get you to your destination faster. Feeder bus routes connect you to the spine or take you places within your community. Feeder routes don't go downtown. By avoiding congested areas, you can rely on them to be on time. Separating service this way is more efficient. More efficient service means that we can add more buses to the primary transit lines so that they come more often. When buses come more often, you spend less time waiting, and there's more room for you on the bus. We're excited to tell you about the Primary Transit Network. Learn more at winnipeg.ca/primary transit network.
All right, so I'm just got a note just here to maybe make this a little bit more full screen here. So I'm just going to see if I can accommodate that.
Hide presenter view. Sure.
I think you had it there, Steve. It was the hide presenter view. If you go into the view. What's that first window that you had open there with all the options?
Thank you for bearing. We're just reopening it. Thanks for bearing with us.
No worries.
I think I see it now. Sure. All right, thank you. All right, how are we looking now, everyone?
Perfect.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you for bearing with us. Sorry here. All right, so what is the primary transit network? Primary transit network is organized into a spine and feeder system. Network is made up of primary lines. So we can think of these as kind of the main routes and feeder routes. These are the ones that intersect on this graph here. The new network provides more frequent, direct, connected, and simplified service across Winnipeg. So what are specifically primary lines? These are the simpler, straighter, and fewer stops than many of the current routes. So primary lines you can think of as being the main routes, really. They run on like the busiest roads. They, in any city of Winnipeg size or greater, follows a similar system as this, the spine and feeder system. In many cases, it would be using a light rail as the primary line. In our case, we're just using buses. So that's why often on these busy primary lines are where you'll see the articulated buses. So like the Blue Rapid Transit line, for instance. So same principle, it's just using buses only. With fewer stops, buses run more efficiently, reducing wait times and getting you to your destination quicker. During peak hours, they arrive so often that checking a schedule isn't necessary. The primary lines consist of rapid transit, so the blue bus, which we've had for a while. The only change with the launch of the primary transit network is it now, instead of ending downtown, goes all the way out to Unicity. The next most frequent is called the Frequent Express. So if you've been seeing the FX2, FX3 and wondering what that stands for, it's just Frequent Express. Frequent, so these are always indicated with green. So the F5, F6, F7, F8 are some examples of frequent lines. And then the direct. Nominally, the direct would be connecting different areas of the city and is the fourth most frequent of the primary lines. So D12, D13 are examples of direct lines. It's not super important. The other part of these different line designations is that they will connect with how far apart the bus stops are and how frequent the service is. So it's not crucial to remember all that information, but if you're looking at a bus stop sign and it has a D in front of the name, then you know a D or an F, basically a letter, then you know that it's on the primary line. It will be running more frequently. We'll now talk about the feeder routes. So this is the second part of the spine and feeder system. Feeder routes connect you to the primary transit network. Feeder routes avoid congested areas to stay on time more often. So a big difference between the spine and feeder system and what we have had before with the radial system is that not every bus line goes downtown. If you lived downtown, this was a double-edged sword under the old system. You had a feast of options to get you to any different area of the city, all connecting right through downtown. The flip side of that is that around rush hour, you would have one bus behind another bus, what we call in the transit business, bus bunching. An anecdote I like to tell about taking the bus under the old system going through downtown was that I would have to cross Portage at Vaughan, and I would be able to I had a ton of options, but they were all always late. And the example I like to think about most is that I got off my bus and I was at Portage and Vaughan, just on the side of the bay, and I couldn't even cross the street because there was 3 buses backed up behind each other blocking the sidewalk. So that's part of the rationale of what we're trying to avoid, is to have lessen that congestion. The feeder routes. Now, you don't need to remember all this information. It's just good to have in the back of your mind. And after the presentation, we can share you resources on where you can dig a little more deeply into what separates all the different designations. But the 2 most common ones would be connector routes. These will always have 2 digits. So the examples we have here are the 28, the 37, the 74. These are designed to connect you to the primary transit network. So these would often be your first bus, and then you connect to the primary lines. Community routes, these will always have 3 digits. So these are a bit more like bus service, older bus routes in terms that they do a bit more of a circuitous path. They'll go around a community. So you can still use these as a connector route, but they're often used just to take you, from your house to a local grocery store to visit a friend. On request, we will talk quite a bit about that. We have a few slides dedicated to it, but it's basically an on-demand service. Limited span, very much like community routes, they just have very specific hours, usually to support like industrial areas, so just around work hours. So like the early shift, maybe an evening shift, that's about it. All right, so we've probably all seen these new bus stop signs around town by now. A couple changes that were made is that they are a lot bigger than old bus stop signs used to be, with the eye to be that you can see them from a distance. Crucially, while you're on a bus already, you can actually see what buses are stopping at the stop. They're double-sided, so they're actually put on both sides of a pole, so you can see from either direction what buses stop there. They're quite a bit more reflective than the old signs. They're highway grade reflective. One thing that's the same as before is they still have a 5-digit stop number. So a lot of bus stops have moved or been bus stops where there weren't one before. But in many cases, the service just changed at the stop. So if the bus stop had previous buses before, the stop number will remain the same. So if you know the bus stop near where you live or work is still a bus stop, and you've known that you've written down that bus stop number before, you can continue to use that. And that connects in with our telebus service. For anyone who hasn't used it before, Telebus is a totally automated system. You just call it in 204-287-7433 or 287-RIDE. Punch in the 5-digit stop number and it'll tell you all the buses that are going to arrive at that stop and when. So it's a really great, this is what I used before I had a smartphone. I was relatively late to the game. So when I was going to high school or early university, I would just phone Telebus before I left my house, find out when the buses are coming. So that's a great thing that you can still use if maybe you're not using a cell phone or you don't want or don't have access to one. All of our schedules are available online. You can use our website, which is winnipegtransit.com, which has access to Navigo, our trip planning tool. You can also look up stops and schedules and explore the routes. If you use the Winnipeg Transit app, the website version is exactly the same. They're just the same program. One is just an app, one is on the website. We are aware, of course, that not everyone is online. So you can contact 311 for trip planning assistance or any general questions. I'd really highly encourage you, if you do call 311, to wait for the phone tree to tell you. It'll be like press 1 for public works, press 2 for parking, press, I believe right now it's 5 for transit, but it changes very often. The reason I'm calling that distinction out is that we did hire about 20, 30 additional 311 staff just to handle transit concerns. So the wait time is often a lot less if you wait in that line than if you call the general line. If you wait, you will get someone eventually, but you'll likely have to wait a bit longer. I think over the last few weeks, the wait time's generally been under a minute to speak to a transit rep. So yeah, really encourage you to do that. So we have more resources available at winnipeg.ca/primary transit network. You can actually see a full copy of the system map and find printable versions of the schedules. All right, so Winnipeg Transit on request. This is something that is new to a lot of people in Winnipeg. The reason being is we went from, under the old system, we had four on request zones. Now we have 12. So a lot of people never had the need to know what it is. So it's a very cool service. So I'm going to spend a few slides kind of explaining what it is, how you use it, and where you can find an on-request zone. So in a nutshell, Winnipeg Transit is a affordable, convenient, efficient service for low-density neighborhoods that don't have a full-time transit service. It uses GPS to plan bus routes in real time and responds immediately to trip requests. So very similar if you used a rideshare service like Uber or Lyft, it functions very similar to that, as in it's planning the trip as you're ready to go. You don't pre-book it, you just, I want to go, you set it up and it will figure out the most efficient route to pick you up and anyone else using that service. We had that great Wayne's World picture at the start of this presentation, so maybe that's a good opportunity to sing some Queen on a transit bus. Just like our fixed transit service, on request is shared ride service, so there will be other passengers picked up and dropped off. And just because you get on first doesn't mean you'll be the first dropped off. It'll rearrange the route in real time to make sure it's most efficient. It's available to anyone. You just have to book it. A question we get asked a lot is whether it's an additional charge or if it's available to only some people. Anyone can use it, and it costs the exact same as the conventional system. That is a big part of Winnipeg Transit and our broader services, that for on request, Winnipeg Transit Plus, which is our paratransit service, and conventional transit, they all have the same fare. So if you have a discount like a student pass or a seniors discount or the Win Pass, then that will apply to any transit services that you're using. So it's not an additional cost at all. You can in fact still use a transfer to get on an on-request bus, and it will be valid for another trip as well. So let's dig into a little bit more how these on-request trips work. If you're in a defined on-request zone, you can book a bus to pick you up and drop you off within the zone. Trips are booked at the time of travel, so you don't pre-book it, like as in you don't do it like the day ahead or a week ahead. You book it when you're ready to go. The app or representative, if you do this through calling 311, will give you step-by-step trip information, basically breaking down all the stages of your journey for you. So as I'm kind of alluded to, that there is multiple ways to book on request. The easiest, if you have access to a smartphone, is to download the Winnipeg Transit Plus on request app, set up an account, and book your trip. It's very easy to set up an account. You really just need to enter a phone number, confirm it, and you're ready to go. It's the same app that is used for Winnipeg Transit Plus, which is again is our paratransit service. You can, if you just have access to a home computer, or you've just decided that I have enough apps on my phone, you can book online at winnipegtransit.com/book on request. And again, it's exactly the same process. The app and the website function exactly the same. If you don't have access to the internet or a smartphone, you can also just book on request by calling 311. Just follow the prompts for booking on request transit. Just like you would if you were setting up the account yourself, a customer service rep will do that for you. They'll create your account and they'll book your rides for you, and then they'll just read out those the step-by-step instructions for you. So this is what it will look like. This is a screenshot from the app, but again, it's the same on the website, and a rep would be able to read you through this if you were doing it by the phone. So you get step-by-step directions, including walking from your trip origin to where you're being picked up, the approximate pickup time and estimated total trip time. We say approximate and estimated because it's a real-time service and other people may be booking trips while you've got one scheduled, so they're going to adjust it a little bit. Your drop-off location and directions for walking to your destination. On-request stops can be virtual stops, so they'll typically be the closest intersection to your origin or destination. But they will make use of a in-service bus stop as much as possible. But if not, it will be at the closest intersection. So this is what it looks like on the screen. As you can see, it's very similar to if you've ever used a rideshare service. You just start with where do you want to go and then take it from there. So what hours do on-request buses operate? It's a bit of a loaded question because most zones do have a fixed route that operates during peak hours. When I say peak hours, I mean rush hour, basically. So 7 to 9 in the morning, 3:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon to early evening. On-request buses operate when the demand is lower. So this is often in evenings and weekends. Although there are some exceptions, we do have a few zones that have daytime service as well. On-request schedules are available on winnipegtransit.com. Or again, if you're using the Winnipeg Transit app, you can just go to the Explore Routes section, punch in the on-request number, and I'll show you exactly when it's operating. So we moved from 4 on-request zones previously to 12. So this is all 12 on-request zones. I won't read them all out, but we'll pause for a moment here in case anyone wants to take a screenshot. Bolded are the ones that have daytime service. St. Boniface is one that I know is quite active during the daytime because they actually have a supermarket that the bus is able to pull into. So it's a very popular on-request area. This is all available online. I'm also happy to share the presentation to Mel afterward to share as a PDF for anyone interested. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about accessibility with the primary transit network. So we have priority and courtesy seating zones. I'm not sure if anyone's been on one of these types of buses before. This is a screenshot this is a little picture of one of our newest buses, and it has these priorities and courtesy seating zones, and then the regular seating differentiated by color. So we have our priority seating zones, which are yellow seats. They're at the very front of the bus. These are intended for persons with a disability who will benefit from being able to see where the mobility securement sections are and be very close to the front door. The green section just behind is what we call the courtesy seating zones. So anyone can sit in any of these zones, but the courtesy seating zone is targeting older adults, or perhaps someone traveling with young children, or even just carrying a lot of groceries. Some of these sections with the green seats actually have the seats that flip up as well as the priority seating area, so they can work well for someone traveling with a walker. Every bus in the fleet is a low floor bus with the ability to kneel and extend a ramp. So the bus can physically lower itself to the curb level and then extend a ramp. So it's very helpful for someone traveling in a wheelchair or a scooter, or even someone maybe just recovering from surgery who isn't able to lift their leg completely. All of our buses have next stop announcements and visual stop displays. I will put a small asterisk. I know there was some recent GPS issues that they've been closing the loop on. I've noted it being a little bit better on my end lately. But these are very helpful for anyone, even just taking a bus in an area you're not used to traveling in, because it will actually say out loud and show on the display at the front of the bus when the next stop is. So if you're taking a different route to get somewhere, which is probably the case, because all the routes have changed, it can be a good mental note. You know, you have to get off at, say, Notre Dame and Pearl, but you're not familiar with that stop. A good amount of our buses, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 out of 800 buses in the fleet, have external announcement as well, which means they can actually play audio outside of the bus announcing what the stop is. So very helpful for persons who are blind or have difficulty seeing. We have a kind of loop back a little bit with on request. I want to talk about, we have an expanded on request option for Transit Plus customers. So as I briefly said before, Transit Plus is what we call our paratransit service. So this is for people who aren't able to comfortably aren't able to ride the conventional transit system, usually due to a disability, so unable to walk a certain distance. There's a lot of criteria online that you can explore. Transit Plus used to be called Handy Transit. So we have this option for Transit Plus customers. If they're in an on-request zone, they can actually get curb-to-curb service. So instead of being dropped off at a bus stop or an intersection, they can be dropped off at the curb of where they're going and picked up as well. So instead of walking to that virtual stop or bus stop, they're just picked up from their location. There's a big asterisk here that this has to be on streets where buses can't travel. Cul-de-sacs as an obvious example, because if at a Winnipeg Transit, a full 40-foot bus goes down a cul-de-sac, it's not coming out of that cul-de-sac. So this gives a new option for Transit Plus customers to take transit without having to book in advance. If you've never used Transit Plus or don't know anyone who uses it, you might not be aware that service, you have to book in advance, at least 5 p.m. the day prior, up to a week in advance. So it's a great service, but it doesn't work for, if you want to do a trip the same day, it's not going to be an option. So this is a new option for those riders. Highlighted here in this example is just the St. Boniface zone. So showing that a nice practical use for it is if someone's living in that area and they have an appointment at the St. Boniface Hospital, the on-request bus can be really helpful. That is one of the zones that has some daytime hours as well. I don't remember adding that in, so that was a surprise to myself as well. So I want to talk about some tools and resources. These are really great help in kind of breaking down the primary transit network. So of course we have Navigo, which is available on the website, winnipegtransit.com/Navigo, or on the app. We actually have an instructional video one of our colleagues prepared on YouTube that walks you through, if you've never used it before, just how to use it, how to save your settings. They've recently made a change with Navigo when you start to book a trip, it asks you if you want to set your walking pace or your preferences for how long you're willing to walk, wait for a bus. But you can also save all that information into a profile so that you don't have to keep re-entering it. We have our primary transit network website, so winnipeg.ca/primary transit network. This is a continually updated FAQ section. So it addresses a lot of hot questions that are coming up, has a full PDF of the system map and a lot of great granular information. So if you want to maybe dig into, what's the difference between a frequent line, a frequent express, and I want to know what the stop spacing is, I want to know the frequency, you can do that there. And of course, winnipegtransit.com, just generally for trip planning, printable route maps, stop schedules, and timetables. We have a couple different apps that can be used for trip planning. We have, of course, the Winnipeg Transit app, which is owned and designed and maintained by the city. We also have an app that I know is very popular called the Transit app. So this is used across the country, I think possibly North America as well. We've partnered with them. So Transit has provided their data to the Transit app as kind of a pilot program. Both will do what you need it to do. They'll give you bus information and help you plan trips. The Transit app has a couple of cool features I do want to call out, that it does integrate on request into it, which is really neat. And it does have a really great live bus feed. So if you're just looking, a lot of people use the third-party app, Winnipeg Bus Live. Transit app does a lot of that. I find it a bit more accurate and it's all integrated into one app. So both great options. If you're wanting to figure out what's the best route to somewhere and you have a little time to play around, I recommend even trying both and just seeing. It may give you some transfer points that you hadn't thought of, give you different options. We have a community toolkit. This is on the Primary Transit Network website. It includes printable resources, so fact sheets and information, and also locations of, we have something we call the community bus that during the summer was parking at like farmers markets, the shopping malls, and so on. So if we have public events, they'll be posted there as well. 311, of course, our venerable city service. It's the funnel for all of Winnipeg's city services and transit as well. Although again, always wait for the transit option before you commit to waiting in line. All right, so what happens next is a big hot topic. I know we just launched a couple weeks ago the fall schedules, and winter is on the horizon, so that has a lot of people thinking about what's coming up next and what happens after the first year of launching this. So I want to call out that we have, for the fall schedule, we did actually make a lot of changes, and this was based on feedback from riders. And we'll touch on how to submit your feedback to 311 in I think the next section here as we wrap up. But I just want to quickly walk you through a couple of changes that were made as part of the fall schedule. So people know that although we're not making any big changes during the first year, there are little adjustments being made. And this is completely on the back of the feedback that we're getting from riders. So we relocated bus stops at 6 locations for reduced walking distance and to be closer to controlled crossings. Controlled crossings are basically just crossings that have a spot to, like a pedestrian crossing light. We've added articulated buses to reduce overcrowding on the F8, the Pembina Henderson Highway bus. We've expanded on request service to serve growing communities with some additional buses to zones. The 101 South St. Vital, 102 Sage Creek Windsor Park, the 103 Northwest, the 106 Northeast, the 111 Waverly West, and the 112 White Ridge West Fort Garry. We've adjusted some schedules to improve on-time performance on the D12 Ellis and the D13 Sargent. I am a West End guy, so this is very relevant to me. They're great buses, but I do acknowledge that they've been not the most on schedule. And the D16 Academy Notre Dame, which is probably the least direct of the direct buses. I think Transit has acknowledged that this one's probably going to need a bit more, a bigger change in the winter schedule and beyond. I think they're even considering some options of maybe splitting it into 2 routes, because it is quite a beast of a route, the D16. And full schedule changes to these routes will come later this year. So they made some small adjustments to try to ease the issue in the interim, but they acknowledge that it's going to take till the winter schedule and beyond before they can make bigger changes. Moving forward, we do want to see higher frequencies. We want to see new infrastructure. So this could be new bus stop infrastructure. From doing these presentations, Nora and myself, we've heard a lot that concerns about where there isn't bus shelters. So we can tell you that there is budget allocated for bus stops and bus shelters. So it is a work in progress, but it is on everyone's radar to build that in. And if you see an example of one that you really think needs to be prioritized, really take the time to call it out to 311. Primary line extensions, one thing's for certain is the city keeps growing. We're edging up to 1 million, which comes in with adding new service in developing areas. As the city continues to grow, demands for more service, it becomes a need. And again, that's a big part of why we did this change in the first place, because it's a lot easier to change a more modular system than one that is that old radial wagon wheel system. All right, so how can I leave feedback on the new changes? There's a couple main ways that you can do this, and the city is very hungry for this type of feedback. I know they've done a few public callouts of this, and from speaking to transit planners, we can assure you that they really do need to see this feedback. Calling through on one by phone, again, listen to that option for transit is one way to do it. You can also fill out the Primary Transit Network online form. So again, it's just on winnipeg.ca/primary transit network. And then the button looks exactly like it is here, submit a primary transit network inquiry. Your feedback is super important, and it will be taken into consideration as part of the service planning process. There is an annual review slated for June to capture a full year of feedback. So they'll be doing preparation for that sooner than later. So if you have feedback that is really burning a hole in your pocket, I would say do it sooner than later to ensure that it gets part of that process. And as we've shown with the fall schedule change, although big changes like changing a route, definitely not going to happen in year one. Smaller changes like removing a bus stop or making some schedule adjustments are definitely possible and will continue to happen. We do want to caution that people please be descriptive as possible when submitting route and stop feedback. So it's really helpful to say, the specific route you're having trouble with and why. So for example, like say this community route in my neighborhood ends too early, which is impacting my ability to get home without taking a cab. That's really descriptive, actionable feedback. We get a lot of colorful feedback that's, along the lines of it sucks and I hate it, which although maybe an understandable sentiment given the circumstance, it's probably not something that planners can really make a change on. So giving a bit more information, that'll help them prioritize, and then weigh that against, how many other people are asking for this feedback, how feasible is it? It all helps with prioritizing to be as descriptive as possible. All right, so that comes to the end of the formal presentation here. Thank you for bearing with us. Obviously, I know all ears on questions, so yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen here and yeah, let Mel how you want to guide this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. That was a great presentation. I actually don't see any questions yet coming in to the Q&A little button there. So if folks want to take a moment to type in a question, if you've got one, please feel free to do that. We'll maybe hang on the call for another couple of minutes just to see if we get some questions coming in. I assume people are also eating lunch at the same time.
For sure, that's what I'll be doing after this.
So. Yeah, me too.
And I just want to share everyone again. I'm going to be sending this presentation to you, Mel. So I don't know how it works with participants, but we're perfectly happy if you want to distribute the presentation in PDF format to other people. Like I said, if questions don't occur to anyone now, but you do have them later on, 311 is a great resource. We can show you. You don't have to wait online, even if you don't want. If the wait times are very low, but if you don't even want to call and you just want to submit feedback or you have a question that you want to follow up on, just reach out to 311 through the online form and they'll follow up with you that way.
Awesome. Yeah, we actually just got a question in. Joanna asks, how popular are the on-request bookings since the launch?
I think it's a great question. It depends on the area of the city. I know there's like the St. Boniface zone is extremely popular. I think like the 103 is there's quite a lot that it will vary a little bit by area, but I know I think the 103 has been quite popular. The St. Boniface one has been around. That's not new with the launch, and that one's been a very popular one. So it varies a little bit, but I know there's been some pretty consistent one in those two zones for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of like learning how it works and figuring out that out for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's been part of why we're doing these presentations, because we know a lot of areas of the city, they have an on-request zone now, but they didn't before. So people don't know what it is. They don't know how to do it. They think maybe it's an extra charge. So that's been part of why I know Mel asked me just before we did this if we could talk about on-request. I was like, oh, we talk a lot about it in the presentation because we know it's something very new to people. I see a question about...
Yeah, I'm seeing one about just asking why there was such a big change. Like, why do it all at once? I think is kind of the big one coming in.
Yeah, so That it's a great question, and I know people often ask, like, why did we do this all at once? Why not in stages? It's one that we asked the transit planners ourselves, and they said they really did try to think of a way they could possibly do it, but because our old system was so interconnected with everything going downtown, you couldn't really make a meaningful change to one part of it without changing everything. So they thought about it, and I think they decided that ultimately doing it all at once was going to be less confusing than, within a bus ride, you're going from one system to another system. Part of the couple of the rationales for why they did the change in the first place was, again, trying to ease that issue of congestion. I think the feedback that City Council and Transit was receiving was that reliability, uh, buses not being on schedule were the biggest concerns. So trying to ease that congestion issue by not sending every single route downtown, and giving a more even transit experience across the city was a big part of why they wanted to do the change. Another part of it was to keep pace with the city growing. If we think about how many new developments, I mean, just within my own adult lifetime, not even my whole lifetime, I know there's been quite a few developments that didn't exist like even 20 years ago. So that's part of the rationale is why they did the change, was to ultimately make the service more reliable and to keep pace with growth. Let's see, double buses added to.
Oh yes, those lovely articulated buses, but we need more. Yeah.
Yeah, the F8 was a big priority. I'm not sure about specific plans to move the articulated buses to other bus lines, but no, there are other routes that are very heavily impacted. I think at this point they only have so many, but with the bringing on the zero emission buses that we've got a few on the streets already and quite a few more. Those are all much larger buses. So I think having longer buses with more capacity and more in the fleet is something that is something we see on the horizon, but I couldn't say specifically about which routes. I know it's going to be based on, like, again, that demand that they get from 311 and so on. Like, I know I take the F5 and around rush hour, that's an extremely busy bus. Like when I get on, it's a sardine can, and then it levels off a little bit as it gets through the west end. But yeah, and for the blue line, yeah, I think that's obviously a priority to have the articulated buses on the blue line, but of course they're trying to move them around to see where they're needed most. So I imagine as we have more buses that are more higher capacity buses, they will add them back to the blue line would be reasonable assumption, but I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah, just seeing one question here, just in regards to stop changes, if there are going to be changes to where stops are, and if more are going to be added in, just timeline kind of for that.
I would say, like, if it didn't happen with the fall schedule change, I would say seeing changes probably next time you'd be likely to see them would be with the winter schedule change. It's possible that if there was like a really accelerated situation, I could see that they do it between, but likely it would be with the winter schedule change if they're going to make any changes. I don't want to say for sure about that specific instance, but that would be the next time I would find it likely that they would make any changes to stops would be with the winter schedule. Great question.
That Norm is answering some of these questions just in regards to different
Thank you, Norm.
languages for presentation. Thank you, Norm.
Yeah, oh, no, Norm, you're answering that one?
I'm typing, but
Okay, yeah. Short form is that for sure in English and French, I usually handle the bilingual ones for French. I know different members of our team can answer in different languages, but French and English is what we can support for sure. I know Norman, for instance, speaks Tagalog, so has been able to assist in presentations in that capacity. But English and French are the two we can guarantee. The rest will be dependent on who's on the team at that time. I know resources are available in other languages on the website, the Green Transit app. The Winnipeg Transit app is just English and French, but if you use the Green Transit app, again, it's a third-party app, but that one has quite a few more languages options. So just as a little aside. But yeah, English and French, we could for sure support. Others make the request. We could see if we could accommodate it within people within our team.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Well, maybe give it another few
Great
seconds
questions.
here. Yeah, these were good questions.
But yeah, you know, again, just if you do find, if you want to know more about travel training and the kind of, and maybe some of the things I've talked about, or the supports that we can offer, have lit a light in your head, you can just, like, on the Winnipeg Transit website, just go to the travel training section, and we can reach out to us, submit a request, just go through 311 and let them know what you're thinking, and it will come to our team and we'll do our best to accommodate it. But we can do presentations for groups, individuals, so all sorts. And if you have general questions outside of this, absolutely just reach out to 311, submit your question that way, and they'll do their best to connect you with the right person to give you an answer.
All right, fantastic. I'm not seeing any more questions coming in here. So yes, I guess we'll wrap this up for now. So I just want to say thank you so much from us here at Green Action Center to yourself, Steve and Norm, and to everybody who came out to the webinar today. It was great to see so many people in the room. You can find out more about our programs here at Green Action Center. We're joining you today from the Workplace Commuter Options team as part of the Sustainable Transportation team. And you can connect with us by phone, toll free, go happy at greenactioncenter.ca. If you do come up with any questions that weren't answered today that you think of, please do reach out to us. And definitely go to gomb.ca if you haven't already to create your Go Manitoba account and to participate in GoTober all month long. And that's it for us today. So thank you so much to everybody for coming out, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having us. This was a really cool event. Take care, everyone.
See you soon. Bye-bye.